The homeowner association was always a problem, but I tried to ignore it. Until one day, came home and found all my trees demolished. No warning, no permission, no explanation. They had invaded my property and cut everything down. The homeowner association president, an egotistical woman who thinks she runs the neighborhood, smiled and said it was to maintain community standards. But what didn't she know? I'm a federal judge, and now she is about to learn what happens when you violate the law in front of the wrong person. I always knew that the homeowner association in my neighborhood was a problem, but until that day, they had never directly targeted me. I saw the complaints from the neighbors, the little tyrannies that the homeowner association president imposed on the community, and I preferred to stay away. Not because I was afraid, far from it, but because I knew that if she came after me, she'd be playing with fire. The problem with the people is that they never know when to stop. I was proud of my property. My yard was surrounded by old, well-kept trees, planted decades before by generations gone by. They were part of the land's heritage, offering shade, beauty, and privacy. When I bought the house, I made it clear that I wanted no intervention from the homeowner association. I paid cash without the need for financing or permits, and I never signed any contract forcing me to obey the association's ridiculous rules. But that never stopped the woman from trying. Ever since I moved in, she's always had a way of pressuring me. First, there were the polite letters suggesting that I should remove elements outside the community standard. Then came the aesthetic violation notices for the simple fact that my trees didn't match her vision of a perfect neighborhood. I, like any sensible person, threw all these cards in the garbage can. And then one day, came home from work and almost didn't recognize my own house. All my trees had been cut down, not pruned, not adjusted, knocked to the ground. The yard that had once been covered by a green shield now looked like an abandoned lot with tree stumps scattered around like tombstones of something that should never have been destroyed. The smell of freshly cut wood was still in the air. My first reaction was absolute disbelief. This couldn't be real. Who the hell would have the nerve to break into private property and ruin something like that? But when I saw a pickup truck parked on the street with the homeowner association logo emblazoned on the side, it hit me. It did it. The homeowner association invaded my land and simply decided that those trees no longer had the right to exist. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't ordinary anger. It was a specific kind of rage that chilled down your spine, that only comes when you realize that someone has crossed the line, and now you're going to have to deal with the consequences. And who better to deal with that than a federal judge? The feeling of looking at that scene of destruction was something I couldn't describe. The place that used to be a peaceful green patch of my house now looked like a graveyard after a bombing. It was personal. It wasn't just careless pruning or a misunderstanding. It was a direct attack. The homeowner association wanted to prove a point, wanted to teach me a lesson, but they chose the wrong person to do it. I took a deep breath, mentally counting to 10 so as not to make an impulsive move. I knew exactly how to ruin this woman, and it wouldn't be by shouting in the middle of the street. I would do it the right way. But first, I wanted to hear it from her. I turned to the homeowner association truck, which was still standing in the street like a war trophy, and walked over to it, and there she was. The woman got out of the passenger seat as if she had been expecting my reaction, with a satisfied little smile on her face and her hands folded as if she were about to explain some nonsense. Rule to me. I'm so glad you're here, she said with that feigned tone of sympathy. We were just adjusting the appearance of the community. Your trees weren't up to homeowner association standards. I stared for a few seconds, letting the silence stretch. She wanted an emotional reaction. She wanted me to yell, to make a scene, to give her a reason to make me the problem. But I just smiled. I get it, I replied calmly. So let me get this straight. You came onto my property without permission and cut down my trees because you thought they weren't in accordance? She blinked a few times, surprised by my controlled reaction. I could see her confidence shaking, but she soon regained her composure. Not quite. The homeowner association has authority over the appearance of the neighborhood, and your trees were out of line with the established standard. Everything was done to maintain community balance. Balance. Always that word, always used by people who want to dominate everything around them. I nodded slightly, as if considering her words. Good. Then you won't mind if I take it to court? Then you won't mind if I take this to court? The change in her expression was almost immediate. The smile disappeared, replaced by a confused, then suspicious. Look, court. She tried to laugh, but her voice came out a little sharper than before. There's no need to take it to that extent. It was a simple decision by the homeowner association within our rights. I stepped forward, looking directly into her eyes. I'm a federal judge. Her face drained instantly. I could have filmed that moment and watched it on repeat for the rest of my life. The arrogant posture wilted. The hands that had once been firmly crossed now loosened and fell to the side of her body. What? And you committed trespassing. You damaged private property without authorization. This isn't just an administrative error by the homeowner association. It's a crime. She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. For the first time, she realized the size of the problem she had gotten herself into. I turned away without saying another word and went into the house, because I already knew exactly what was going to happen next. I came home feeling a different kind of thrill. It wasn't anger, pure and simple. It was that cold, meticulous energy of someone who has already won a conflict before it has even begun. The homeowner association may have thought it ran the neighborhood, that it was invincible, that it could do whatever it wanted. But what that woman didn't know was that she had just messed with the one person who could legally crush her without breaking a sweat. I sat down at my office desk and began to organize what I needed. The first thing was to gather proof of the invasion and destruction of my property. I pulled up the recordings from the security cameras. Every tree being cut down, every homeowner association truck entering without permission. The images were clear. They weren't just removing vegetation. They were deliberately vandalizing my property. Then came the legal part. As a federal judge, I knew exactly where to look for the homeowner association's violations. And that's where it got interesting. I did some research in the city's public records and confirmed what I already suspected. My house was not legally under the homeowner association's jurisdiction. In other words, not only were they trespassing on private property, but they had no power whatsoever to touch anything there. What's more, in my state, removing trees without permission can lead to fines of tens of thousands of dollars depending on the size and age of the trees, and some of mine were over 50 years old. The homeowner association was doomed. But I wasn't going to stop there. I started digging into the homeowner association's financial reports. I knew that there were rules for the use of the money collected from residents. And I also knew that many of these associations commit small frauds here and there. The problem, this homeowner association wasn't just committing minor embezzlement. The transactions made no sense. Huge payments for landscaping services that were never carried out, transfers to personal accounts, excessive amounts being charged to residents with no clear explanation of where they were going. The money was simply vanishing, and who was signing off on all these transactions? The same woman who destroyed my yard. I had enough to dismantle this homeowner association from top to bottom. But before taking legal action, I decided to test the waters. Over the next few days, I waited to see what their next move would be. The woman didn't have the courage to show up in person. But I tried not to laugh when I received a letter from the homeowner association. It was a festival of pathetic excuses. They claimed that the trees were old and posed a hazard, that it was all a misinterpretation, and that they regret any trouble. The best part, at the end of the letter, there was a warning that I could be fined if I tried to plant new trees without homeowner association approval. They still thought they were in charge. I kept the letter with a smile. It would come in handy in court. But before filing suit, I wanted to give them a taste of their own medicine. I started talking to the neighbors, the ones who were already frustrated with the homeowner association. I called some of them to my house for an informal chat and showed them what I had discovered. The fraud, the embezzlement, the unfair decisions. The shock was instant. That explains why the homeowner association never has money for anything. One of the neighbors said, staring in disbelief at the financial reports. They raise our fees every year, but we never see where that money goes. Another resident added. The outrage began to grow that same day. Some of these people started pressuring the homeowner association to explain where the community's money was. And the woman, well, for the first time, she didn't know how to answer. But I hadn't even started playing my cards yet. Now, it was time to take it to a level she never thought possible. Over the next few days, I watched the homeowner association begin to collapse like a condemned building. The neighbors' anger grew by the day. The conversations in the neighborhood were no longer about trivial, everyday problems, but about the missing money and the president's abuse of power. The woman who used to walk around the neighborhood like a queen giving orders now avoided even leaving the house. She knew that the trap was closing in. But her problem, I hadn't even started yet. I knew exactly how to eliminate the homeowner association the right way. First, I filed an official complaint with the town hall about the illegal removal of the trees. This led to an environmental investigation, and soon the inspectors were in my yard taking photos, analyzing the damage, and calculating the size of the penalty. They confirmed that the tree could not have been removed without authorization, and that the homeowner association would be held liable. I then forwarded all the documentation of the financial fraud to the government's auditing department. As a federal judge, I knew exactly how to file the complaint in the most effective way possible. And when those reports got into the right hands, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire. But the most satisfying part was yet to come. The final blow. The homeowner association, in desperation, called a meeting to try to calm the residents down. One last pathetic attempt to pretend that everything was under control. And I, of course, made a point of being there. The meeting took place in the community's small events room. The atmosphere was tense with dozens of residents standing around waiting for explanations. The woman stood up, trying to maintain her composure, but her nervousness was visible. She knew she was in front of a makeshift tribunal. She started talking about administrative errors, about how some funds may have been mishandled, and tried to blame operational challenges for the lack of transparency. It was a pitiful attempt to avoid responsibility, but when she finally tried to talk about the trees, I decided it was time to end the charade. I stood up. The silence in the room was immediate. Do you want to talk about the homeowner association funds? Fine. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about them. I put a stack of documents detailing the financial misuse on the table. Here are all the suspicious transactions made over the last 2 years. Money going into accounts that have nothing to do with neighborhood maintenance. Payments to companies that don't even exist. And all signed by you. She turned ghostly. And while we're on the subject of illegalities, I continued picking up the copy of the town hall report. Here is confirmation that the trees were removed illegally. The government is already involved, and the homeowner association will face a penalty of thousands of dollars. The room erupted. The residents started shouting. They demanded explanations. They demanded justice. Some were already talking about suing the homeowner association individually for misuse of money. There was no way out. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. Her phone rang. She answered it, her face already disturbed. It didn't take long for everyone to see the fear spreading through her expression. The homeowner association was officially under scrutiny. The government had seized the association's funds, and a lawsuit was being filed against the administration. She lost everything right there. In that moment, the homeowner association was dismantled. Weeks later, the residents, now free of that nightmare, elected a new group to manage the neighborhood. This time without abuses of power. And the woman? Well, she vanished off the map. Her house was hastily sold, and according to rumors, she moved to the other side of the country to avoid public shame. Me, I stayed exactly where I was. Because in the end, I didn't have to shout. I didn't have to threaten. I didn't have to stoop to her level. I just did what I always do best. I used the law against those who think they're above it. And now, every time I look at my ruined yard, I don't feel angry, because I know that in the place of the trees they destroyed, something much greater was born. Justice. And don't forget to leave your like and comment.